Steve Jobs passing by an electronics store. And the point in the book is there's no real rational explanation why people are attracted to something. I can't give you a rational reason why I was drawn to books or literature. My father isn't like that. He was a businessman. He sold chemical supplies. My mother was a housewife. They loved learning, but neither of them were readers or intellectuals or anything. I can't explain it to you. There's no rational reason. It's just something, I was drawn to it. There was something within me that was just drawn to history. I know it was like history. I just am fascinated by anything in any culture, any period, and literature. So there's nothing I can't say why.
So with that, because you talk about this also in Mastery, I'm curious if you can maybe allude to it a little bit more, is do you think certain people who are, end up doing something incredibly great, like I'm talking about something that's out of the ordinary. I mean, you didn't write a book that sold 50,000 copies, it sold millions of copies worldwide. All of them are international bestsellers. Do you think somebody who does incredibly great things in their lives, is it something they're born with? Or is it events that affects them? Is it an influence? Is it an inspiration? You know how you say leaders are born or leaders are built? What's your opinion about that?
Well, like anything in life, it's a combination of things. There's no simple little formula. So first of all, genetics definitely play a role, and I talk about it in Mastery. So why am I attracted to books? Why is Tiger Woods drawn at the age of 12 months or 14 months attracted to golf, et cetera, et cetera? There's a genetic reason for that. There's something about the way your brain is wired. There's a great book, I think it's Howard Gardner, called The 5 Frames of Mind. I believe, I don't know if I'm quoting it correctly. There are 5 forms of human intelligence: the kinetic, the mathematical, the et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Each person tends to have a dominant form of intelligence that they're good at. Why? It's genetic. You're born that way, and it's not necessarily anything that comes from your parents. It could come from way back in your past. That's an important component, and the key in life is being aware of what makes you different, of what you're naturally drawn to, of these, what I call these, I forget my word in the book, these inclinations, these primal inclinations. But then, of course, experience is equally important. Your teachers, your parents, the environment that you live in, the people that you know as you're growing up, have a huge impact on you. You throw all of that together, and that sort of makes who you are. If I hadn't met Joost Elfers when I was 35 years old, the man who ended up packaging the 48 Laws of Power, I could have all the knowledge and brilliance or wisdom about power, but I would have never written the book because I met him. So luck enters.
You had no plans of writing a book at all?
Not really, no. So luck enters into the picture. There's an element of luck. You don't choose your parents. You didn't choose that you were born in Iran. All these other things come together, and so obviously initiative and effort and something inside of you and willpower is the most important thing. Your level of persistence, not anything intellectual. But then there's an element of luck and blind chance and genetics that come in and play an important role.
So the part about the desire, the willpower, can a generation be also affected by that, by standard of a government or what's being taught or the media? Can all of that also have an effect on that? The firepower in the belly?
Yes, most definitely. America in the 19th century, when you were growing up, the myth of Yankee ingenuity, the whole work ethic, it was a communal thing. People believed that through hard work, that's what made you come to America. Young people were raised with that. I do believe, though, that some people are born with a higher level of ambition than other people.
You think the ambition is really?
Yeah. There's statistics that show in a group of 100 people, 5 will be leaders. There's studies that show the 5% rule, that essentially it's 5% of people that are naturally born leaders. It doesn't mean the 95% are all just followers. There's other places, other roles for people, but there are people that have more ambition, more drive, more hunger. Some of that comes from just something genetic, and some of it comes from the culture, definitely.
Do you think when you said, in America, how it was where you came here, immigrants came here, if you work hard, you can have the life that you want to have, and you can have everything if you're a hard-working person. Do you think that maybe the millennial or the Gen Y subscribes to that philosophy as well today?
No, they don't. No. I think a lot of that is lost. I mean, for my new book and for all of my books, I read a lot of history. And if you look at any great culture or empire, there is inevitably a period of decline. I'm perhaps a student of ancient Rome. Rome started declining at a point more or less, actually before Julius Caesar. Too much money, too much success. A generation is born living in luxury. They're expecting to have everything sort of given to them. And in a period of 100 years, Rome just basically falls apart. You can look at that in the Spanish Empire. You can see about England. It's probably happening to America as well. It's a sort of a cycle. And young people today, they don't grow up with the same kind of hunger and drive that I know my father, whose family were immigrants, second-generation immigrants, that they had. But when I go to a country like in my travels to Russia or India, I see people there who are really, really hungry for a middle-class, upper-middle-class lifestyle, and they are extremely driven to go to school and to learn and better themselves. So I think America is, there's some problems up ahead, and a lot of it is why I wrote Mastery. I wanted to show you, here's a blueprint, this is a formula. It's not rock, it's not magic, it's real. Since the beginning of time, since we human beings have been what we are, this is the sort of the path that people have followed to become absolutely spectacularly brilliant at their field. Mathematics, sports, whatever it is, it's a path. Here it is, because so many people nowadays believe it's just about luck, or if you are able to go to Harvard, or if your parents can't afford to send you to a good school, then you're screwed, or you have to be born a Michael Jordan. No, none of this is true. It's all about what you do with your own natural talent.
Interesting. So going back to what you said with hunger, what do you think is the cause where a generation maybe loses the hunger? Like you said, the hunger is not the same. You said your father came here, immigrant, working, building something, the work ethic. What's caused this generation to lose the hunger?
If I had the answer to that, Patrick, I'd be a billionaire. It's complex. I don't like simplifying things. It's one of my pet peeves. I don't like simple pet answers to stuff. Some of it is, to me, comes from one very fundamental belief. Do you believe that through your own effort, through education, through consciousness, through thinking, through reflecting, you can improve yourself? Do you fundamentally, deep down right in the center of your gut, do you believe that? Because some people will say, yeah, I do, but they don't really believe it. They think inside that it's luck, it's circumstances, it's, what school you went to, etc. And whether you can, maybe there's a drug that'll make me feel good so I don't get depressed. People who believe in crutches, they don't think that it comes from somewhere inside. I think you can make a division there and there. Do you really in your gut believe that through your own efforts, no matter what happens to you, you can, through learning, etc., improve yourself? And we've lost that. A lot of people have lost that deep sense of connection to it. Not in a verbal way like I'm telling you, but you feel it.
So that part here in the book, in 48 Laws, you talk about what made Alexander special is two people. One of them was his mother, and one of them was Aristotle, right? Where his mother had this unwavering belief in the fact that this guy's going to do something special with his life, right? And then he has Aristotle that taught him how to control your emotions, how to stay stable, how to make better decisions, rhetoric, all that stuff that he's teaching. Do you think for me to have that hunger that he's saying that's lost, you got to have that deep down hunger in your belly and your fire? Do you think somebody needs to sell that to me? Do you think somebody needs to impose that belief in me from the top? Maybe it's the country that from the, hey, we're the greatest country in the world in the United States of America. You can do whatever you want to do. You can go out there. Do you think that message of selling is the reason why the generation of Americans that were so optimistic that anything was possible, and maybe we're not selling that concept no more? Or do you think it's just a one-man show where the millennials are not really that driven anymore? I know I'm giving you the question. I know. But this is a lot easier than the lunch questions you and I had.
Well, you know, you can't sell it. It's like a culture that evolves, where people come to America in the 19th century. It's a hard life. It's a pioneer life. It's farming. It's making a living in a harsh environment. There are still Native Americans there, out there to kill you, etc. And you had to work like a devil to get anything that you wanted. So it's not like some salesman out there, a Dale Carnegie, saying, "Look, here's the American." It was just natural. It came up through it.
So you don't think Reagan sold? You don't think Kennedy sold us on how great we are?
No, it did. Those things matter. Those things are very important. But there has to be. It's like, let's say I'm a farmer. I want to plant trees grow. I start throwing them into sand. Nothing's going to grow. Well, it has to be a fertile soil. Yeah. And right now, there's not a fertile soil. So I always talk about Kennedy. That, to me, was the last real president that did what I think a president should do. He created a myth, the myth of the new frontier. We Americans were going to go back to our pioneer spirit. It's going to be centered around the race towards the moon, technology, etc. And we're going to be what our ancestors were, very powerful. And we're still living off the things that Kennedy was talking about early on about the new frontier. Those things matter. And Reagan, what Reagan said, and Clinton, etc. These things are very important. But there has to be a culture there that's receptive. There has to be an ethos that comes from below, that's what you're born with, that your parents instill in you. If that's not there, no amount of selling is going to do it.
So from your parents, ethos from your parents, so parents doing the job what Alexander's mother did to inject that belief in them could play a better role.
Don't downplay Alexander's father. Philip of Macedonia. If there hadn't been a Philip of Macedonia, his mother would have just been this insane woman.
Of course. You know, but there was that part about your first love about Chan, your master. There was an element of she wanted that as well. I mean, you know the whole story on how that worked out. But interesting.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you, since we have completely digressed from general questions, we've gone right into it because you know
I'm all about digression.
So we're going to get into it. But you know, here's a question for you. Okay, so what caused America to do very good? I mean, obviously, free market capitalism. I lived in Iran, so Iran went from imperialism to dictatorship to what happened there with the revolution, and you saw. When Russia and some of these countries try to subscribe to communism with, you know, the inspiration of the book being Communist Manifesto, and America said, we're going to do free market capitalism. You come here, you work, you can build a good life for yourself. If you're willing to, you know, roll up your sleeves and get to work, you can have the opportunity of building your American dream. So all these immigrants from all over the world, I got to go to America. I got to go to America, right? And we got 45 million immigrants in America. Number two is Russia with 11 million. Do you think the role, and again, this is not going to be a yes or no, I'm just curious what you say about this. The role of free market capitalism is two people play a very big role. One is the individual who maybe sells the dream, comes up with a concept, creates something, and then it's the, you know, collective effort, right? So we can't go out there and just say, hey, you know, maybe during one era of a president, it's all about the individual, let's take care of the rich, and in another generation, it's only about collective. How do you think we balance those two out as a country where it's not leaning just towards one side or the other side?
Well, I mean, America's always been an individualist culture. And that's its strength. And you have to play to your strengths. We're not really ever been a collectivist mentality. And you don't
think so?
No. Absolutely never. You go to any other country in the world, and that's the first thing that they talk about. Sometimes you need an outsider to sort of tell you who you are. Everywhere you go, America's a country of individuals. It's an individual spirit, particularly in Europe. When you contrast a country like Spain or Germany or England with the United States, that's what we're known for.
Is that a bad thing, or is
No, it's a great thing. It's a great thing. And there, of course, every country has great individuals and individualist spirit. So these are generalizations. But in general, I believe that sort of ethos of I'm going to sort of develop my natural genius, who I am, and I'm going to create something great, whether it's a business or books or architecture, and in that way, I'm enriching the culture. To me, that's the American dream. You do something as an individual, knowing that you're enriching the society at large. In other countries, it's the opposite mentality. Everything is geared towards the social, and the individual doesn't matter as much. And so you don't really have that sense, like if you're somebody with a lot of ambition and you want to create a great business, it's almost like you feel guilty. You feel ashamed, you feel dirty, because your first thought is towards realizing your own ambition, and it is not towards the collective dream. These are generalizations, but I believe that is the strength of America. And you go to a country now like France, which is experiencing a lot of economic problems. In Europe, all the countries are. There are so many barriers to an entrepreneur. It's outrageous. It's amazing that they've been able to survive as long as they have. That they have economies doing as well as they are. Things are much better here than anywhere in Europe by far. Maybe anywhere in the world. So maybe we shouldn't be complaining so much.
So do you think that could be a reason also why we're dropping our standards, because we keep comparing ourselves to other countries that we're doing better of, so at least we're doing better than XYZ?
No, I mean, mostly you hear a lot of whining.
Here or other countries?
Here.
Here, okay, got it.
I'm not a big believer in whining. I'm a believer in looking at what's good, what's there, the potential, and stop complaining and woe is me. Among the intelligentsia here, there's definitely a sense of what the Carter word of malaise. We're on the decline, etc. Woe is me. I don't like to think like that. I think that there's tremendous energy, and maybe it's coming from a lot of the immigrants that are coming to the United States. So I don't know. 20 years, things could be bleak, but part of me is very hopeful.
So the immigrants are bringing hope to the country.
Well, they always have.
Yeah, of course.
They always have.
So the entitlement mindset, can that really, if we're going to the entitlement mentality, hypothetically, if we are going to that direction, or maybe there's a sprinkle of that going on a little bit, I feel bad for me, all that stuff. How do you shift that entitlement mentality based on what you've studied, what you've seen with different, countries? How do you shift that mindset outside of leaving the entitlement mentality?
It's oh man.
That's pretty tough to do. I mean, I can see it being a lot easier to go from, it's almost like, imagine if you and I are brothers, okay, hypothetically, and we're stepbrothers now. You come from another marriage. Your father was extremely a disciplinarian, okay? And your mother, she loved you, but your father was an extremely disciplinarian, hypothetically. And your father marries my mother, okay? So my mother and your mother are very similar, but my father was not a disciplinarian, okay? Yeah. So now I'm going from a father that never disciplined me. He didn't make me do anything. And now your father comes in and says, Patrick, get your act together.
Yeah.
I'm like, who are you to tell me what to do? My dad wasn't like that.
Yeah.
And you're used to it. So how do we get me to get accustomed to the mindset that your father taught you? I think that's something that we see, the entitlement mindset.
Well, it's once again the belief, a fundamental belief. I keep coming back to that. And we discussed it a little bit at lunch, where the crash of '08 played a bit of a role. If you believe that people get ahead in America by kind of cheating, by playing with the rules, the way the banks were, etc., that's how you get ahead in America. It's all about elites. If you're in on Wall Street, you can make millions of dollars, and the little man is kind of kept out of it. If you believe that that's what it's all about, then you're going to have that, inevitably, that entitlement mentality, and nothing's going to drum it out of you. So it's the connections that the individual makes in their mind. Do they see people out there who, let's say I'm somebody that didn't have a good education, I didn't have an opportunity to go to a great school, I come from an inner city, or wherever. Do I see examples of people out there who have been able to get ahead on their own, through their own initiative, their own drive, create a great business, they're role players and models in my community, and not having to do with rap or entertainment, but they're business, solid things that are employing a lot of people? I believe that there's a connection between your effort and achievement. If you see enough people out there in your family, in your community, then you begin to believe that you yourself can do it. And there'll be a tipping point.
Such a good point.
There'll be a tipping point where there's enough of that going on, where a culture starts developing from the inside.
Yeah.
You
Do
know?
we need media's help with that? And so we're media, instead
If
of
you
putting
need
all the
media's
net-
help, you're already too far gone.
If you need media's help.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're saying this is possible without the need of media? Since
We live in a culture where people are so saturated with internet, media, etc., that it just goes through one ear out the other.
So you don't think media has any influence?
It might.
Really?
It
Robert?
might. It does, but it's minor compared to something that comes from deeper.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. Well, why don't we transition? You talked about education. So after high school, Robert Greene, the author of 40 Laws of Power, goes to college. You go to Berkeley and then you went to University of Wisconsin. And then you come out, and I read that you had some 80 different jobs.
Right.
You had 80 different jobs before the book came about.
Yeah.
So when you talked to your partner and you guys decided to write the 40 Laws of Power, why 48 laws? Why not 50 laws? Why not 25 laws? How did you come up with the number 48 laws?
Well, basically what happened was I had been writing for all my whole life, but I'd never written a book. And I was about 35 years old, and I was in Italy for a job. And I met this man, Joost Elvers, who's a book packager. And he asked me if I had any ideas for a book. And all of my experience working in the work world, particularly in Hollywood, seen a lot of power games. And I read a lot of Machiavelli. And so I just sort of improvised this idea. He got very excited. He said, look, you write a treatment, and if I like it, I'll pay you to live for a year to write the book, and I'll get it sold. And as I'm doing the research for it, and I'm reading Machiavelli, I'm reading history, I'm like a fiend. I'm so excited. This book's going to change my life. I come up, there are these patterns in history. I haven't called them laws yet. They're these patterns. If you do better than your superior, if he or she gets insecure about you, you're in trouble. Oh, I've seen that in China, in Renaissance Italy, in modern America. Never outshine the master. And I'm slowly creating more of these, and I end up with like 72. And I tell Joost, the partner, I've got these laws and stuff. He says, Robert, he's Dutch. That's your book. The laws. Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. That's a good idea. And to me, it's like cooking. You take a sauce and you put it on the burner, and the more you cook, the less and less it gets. So there's a point where it's really strong and tastes wonderful. You can't cook it too much, but you have to cook it just right. Well, I had those 72 laws, and there were too many. And as the sauce gets better and I'm learning more, that's out, that's out, that's out, that's out, down to 48. And that was like the heart of it. That's the really good sauce. They're no more and they're no less, 48.
You know what would be so interesting? I bet everybody would be so curious to know the 24 laws that didn't make the cutoff. I would be so curious. If you wrote something and said the 24 that didn't make the cutoff.
Well, it's not that they didn't make the cutoff.
Were they combined with
they
another
were
law?
combined.
Okay,
nothing
that
was
makes sense.
missing. So, for instance, I remember one, which is about don't make promises. It's a Napoleonic idea. A lot of kings have this idea. Because if you make too many promises, you're going to be held to them. So a ruler should never make too many promises. Be very sparing with them. And I was going to have a law like that. And I go, this isn't a law. It's not weighty enough. But I can put it into say less than necessary. You know, I can put it in other modes. That's what I mean.
Got it. So it got filtered down from 72. Some of them got combined together. By the way, that question was asked because I asked the question on Twitter, and we had Manoj Awasti from Northern India, Uttar Pradesh, who asked the question, why 40 laws? But I asked the question, some guy from India, okay, Jerry Titus. He came out and he said, look, this book, you know, this book is not a book that people need to read. It's purely manipulative, and it's what our politicians, you know, there's a lot of criticism about this book as well. All our politicians subscribe to this book, and he wrote a book that's so disgusting, and it's so many deceptions to it, et cetera, et cetera. And he asked one question. He said, is half truth a whole lie? I said, let me ask Robert a question to see how he's gonna answer that question for you.
I don't know what that means. You know, like I do a lot of consulting, etc. And people ask questions, and I say, well, what do you really mean? If I had Jerry here, get specific, my friend. Tell me what that is. What in real life is that about? You know, do you know what he's asking?
So, Jerry, why don't you ask that question? I'll send it to him, and maybe he'll respond back to you on that. But no, I get what you're saying. I guess, you know, when he was going into it, he is think about it this way. Here's what it is. I mean, this was my response back to him. My response back was...
Just explain to me his question.
Yeah, he's asking a question that, you know, a politician gets up on stage and he says, you know, such and such healthcare program is not going to cost you a single penny. It's going to be free. And then we find out a year later that it does. So it's a half-truth. Is that a lie? Is that okay to do to gain the power?
These are questions that drive me crazy. Of course it's not okay. If we lived in an ideal society, if this were a utopia, yes, that would be terrible. But we don't live in a utopia. We're humans. We're descended from primates. And people lie. And politicians tell us the problem.
Politicians lie? I don't know politicians. They lie?
The problem is with people who believe that we should be something that we're not.
That was my answer back.
So people are too naive. Obviously, when your politician says that, you should be saying, well, I know what he's playing. I know what game he's playing. A law of power right there.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So half the book I wrote to make people less naive about power. Mm-hmm. But I mean, getting to the question of, I don't know if this is a question, is the book evil? Okay, so here would be my response. First of all, humans by our nature, we want power. The feeling that you have no control, it's just that we define the word power in the wrong way. We think of power as some sort of dark force out there.
Negative, not a positive thing.
Oh, but it's always the other person.
Yeah.
It's
we never have power. It's always the other guy that has the power and controls me. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about it's you as an individual.
Yep.
When you're growing up in your family, when you've got siblings and a parent, you want more attention. You want mother and father to look at you. You want the teacher to recognize you. You want to be able to have influence over your parents and over your friends. You want power. You want a degree of control. The feeling that you have from a very early age that you have no power warps you, makes you neurotic, drives you absolutely crazy. You want the feeling that you have control over your destiny, over your circumstances. That's the formula, that's the definition that I give of power. The other thing is, we humans we actually love power.
We love power.
We do. We are seduced by it. That's why shows like The House of Cards, which show all that ugly, dark stuff, is so popular. We love hearing about it. We love the things that go on. But just physically, if we go to a place of power, let's say a big Hollywood studio, if I transported you out there to the offices of HBO or some amazing office, you'd be like, whoa. And you'd be excited and you want to learn. Whereas we are fascinated by it. It's just we don't want to admit it. The book is an expose of what happens in every single human environment. You put 3 people together and they're power games. Maybe 2, I don't know, maybe not so, but
3 people together, there are power games.
Yes. Okay. No matter what. So these are the power games that are played in Hollywood, in business, in politics, in the arts, in sports, etc. You may not like them. I'm not saying that you're going to like selective honesty, where I talk about how people use fake sincerity to get their way, but you're going to want to know about it because people use it all the time. These are the laws that happen behind closed doors in all of these different arenas. If you're an adult, you'll be able to know how to handle that knowledge in a good way.
Yeah, my response back to him is when you say all these politicians who get up there and want to say whatever they want to say to gain our vote, and those guys subscribe to this book, don't you think you need to read the book so you know their strategies on what's happening?
First of all, let's correct a misconception. These people that you're talking about, politicians in India or whomever, or a person like Berlusconi or whomever, they don't need the 48 Laws of Power. They don't need to read it. It's in their DNA. If they have to book, it's already too late for them. These the sharks in the world, the people who are really sharky, like the Eisner, Walt Disney, those types, or Ovitz. These people don't need a book. The book might help them a little bit. They might like reading Sun Tzu, etc. But it's in there. They don't need a book. You, Jerry, out there in India, you're the one that needs to read the book, not them. They don't even 48 Laws of Power.
I think this is a very important book for Middle America to read. I think it's a very important book.